we already know this girl's a badass. She's gonna do
Yep.
just fine on a sprained
Yep.
ankle. Like polio couldn't take her down. Sprained
Yeah.
ankle's not gonna hurt her. Hi, I'm Caitlin.
Hi, I'm Alex.
And welcome to a special episode of Raising the Game. So we've been talking about this for the last few episodes, and we are coming to you today with a little bit of a different structure to what you normally hear on Raising the Game. We're going to take our first journey through kind of a story arc, with it being Women's History Month. We wanted to celebrate by talking about some of the pioneers who have gotten us to what we see today in women's sports. Sort of do a brief overview of a bunch of super impactful female athletes, and then hopefully in future episodes be able to do a little bit deeper dive on each of them.
Yeah, I've had a lot of fun prepping for this, so I'm excited.
I've learned a lot more than I realized. So we are looking forward to this one and would love to hear from you how you feel about this episode style.
Absolutely.
So episode 1 of this special episode type, which we're tentatively workshopping as What's the Story? Is called The Door. And really in that, we're using that as the metaphor for how these women sort of had to bang a door down, get it to crack open, all the different things, challenges they had to face as they were fighting for equality, equity, respect in a lot of cases. So let's get into it.
Let's do it.
So we spend a lot of time on the podcast talking about records. Talk about attendance records. We talk about world records in performance, right? We talk about sold out venues. We've been hyping some of those, high viewership games, viewership records and things like that. None of what we talk about here today on Raising the Game would be possible without the women who paved the way to get here.
Absolutely.
And so what we really sought to answer as we were prepping for this was, how did we get here? But more importantly, who got us here?
Yeah. And so I think what we want to do is kind of introduce the idea that we've already discussed here of a through line called The Door. And what we're going to kind of do here is talk about 11 different women and how each of those on this list kind of broke down a door, built a new one, or held it open long enough for the next generation to walk through it. And sometimes at very enormous personal cost.
Yeah, often.
And the other thing I think that we're going to highlight is that not every woman had the same door in front of them. It was always something new. And so I think we're going to have a lot of similar themes here about kind of this relentless pursuit against different types of resistance, and then also kind of what differentiates them. And kind of dig into a little bit into each of those and kind of try to bring it back to how it connects to what we talk about on a weekly basis. Yeah.
So let's get into it. We're going to open this with kind of our first chapter, if you will, that really is centered around proving or owning existence. And we're going to start back in the 1950s with Althea Gibson. So imagine being told your whole life that a room doesn't exist for you. And then one day someone finally unlocks the door and you walk in and you still can't win. So that was Althea Gibson in 1950. So taking us back, a little bit of her origin story. Althea was born in 1927 in Harlem, New York. She discovered tennis through the paddle courts, just in the neighborhoods where she grew up. And through that, ended up acquiring a mentor who was actually a Black physician in the neighborhood, who mentored her through the all-Black ATA circuit. that was the only circuit available to Black people at the time.
Yeah.
The mainstream USLTA circuit was, of course, segregated and closed off as an opportunity to her entirely.
Yeah, 100%.
So moving ahead, we get into the 50s. So Althea is, 23 years old at this point in time. She has this door cracked open for her by white tennis champion Alice Marble.
Yep.
She writes a public letter shaming the establishment into compliance. So she's a really big tennis star at the time.
Yep.
She writes this letter to the USLTA and is basically like, it's abominable that you don't allow this woman to compete.
Yeah.
She's very qualified. The only reason you're excluding her is racism, right?
Yeah.
And they end up allowing Althea to play.
Amazing.
And Althea becomes the first Black player to compete at the U.S. National Championships in Forest Hills. So this is 1950.
Yep.
And then in 1951, so she showed up, was finally allowed to compete on the tennis circuit. And 1 year later, she is the first Black player to compete at Wimbledon.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's huge.
That's a massive, massive achievement. And I think it's kind of interesting how she was able to getting there is not the same as being welcomed, really.
No.
Right? Like, just because you're allowed in doesn't mean that you are welcome there.
Yeah, you can imagine like the just like discomfort, like an outright kind of lack of safety that she probably experienced being in those same quote unquote rooms as other players on the circuit, being the only Black woman at the time. And so I think we're going to see a little bit more of this here in her story arc.
Yeah.
So she wins Wimbledon, and then the U.S. State Department decides in the mid 1950s that they're actually going to use her as this like symbol of American excellence.
Yep.
And they have her go play tennis in Asia and Southeast Asia on this like goodwill tour.
Yeah.
And they're validating or qualifying that she's good enough to be used as a symbol for like American excellence, yet she's not even held space. There's not even space held for her back home.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like, you're good, but we want you to go away for a little bit and like
exactly
not be in the spotlight.
Or like, we're going to go put you up on a pedestal somewhere where they don't have the same societal rules that we do. Right. Or they're just not enforced in the same ways. I mean, we're literally talking about Board versus Brown. Brown versus Board of Education, excuse me, like passed right around this
racism
time
in America at this point.
And it took 20 years for that to like really kind of settle into normalcy or semi-normalcy. And obviously we know we still face tensions around this today. So she's doing this tour, and you can imagine how that, like we've just talked about, we're speculating, but like how that would make you feel.
Yeah.
She considers quitting tennis altogether. So this is in 1955. She's about 28 years old. She's kind of getting into close to her 30s, and she doesn't really feel like she has a path, like she has a roadmap. And she kind of has to go do like some soul searching. Yeah. Right. Yep. And in that soul searching, I think this is where we really see that resilience that you referenced in the intro, right? She decides she's not going to quit. She actually decides, hey, I'm uniquely gifted and talented to excel in this sport. And so far, when I've walked into these rooms, because of the fear, because of, the prejudice, I've sort of shown up and tried to not lose.
Yep.
She's like, I'm going to go out and I'm going to dominate.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I think the big thing there is that there's a lot of things that make the story great, and the decision of her to continue on is kind of the turning point here.
Yeah. And I think we'll actually see that as a theme for a lot of these women, right? Where they're deciding, door gets slammed, right? And they're deciding like, well, I'm going to go find another door. I'm going to force this one open, right? So here's the payoff. She comes back to tennis, or decides to kind of stay in it, and starts to compete. And then in 1957, so about 2 years or so or excuse me, 7 years, I should say, after she was at Wimbledon
Yep.
before. She wins Wimbledon
Yep.
on center court in Wimbledon in England,
Yeah.
right? And she's handed the trophy by Queen Elizabeth II.
Yeah. Wow.
And I like couldn't get this image out of my head because I'm sitting here being like, here we have the symbol of like one of the most extensive colonizing nations
Yes.
in the
Yep.
world. And then this woman who has faced segregation,
Yeah.
prejudices back home, obviously, right? And so it was just, I couldn't shake that image from my head
Yeah.
as I was thinking about her story.
Yeah.
It's like a weird juxtaposition.
For some reason, I really imagine kind of a lot of kind of empty faces while the award's being handed off by a lot of different people. For some reason.
Yeah. But you know, what a way to kind of like reach that pinnacle. And then guess what, y'all? She turns around and she does it again. She wins back-to-back Wimbledon championships. She wins in that same time period, back-to-back US national championships. She is named AP Female Athlete of the Year during that time. And she is the first world number 1 ranked tennis player as a Black woman.
Wow.
So just out of that like desire to not quit and like embrace who she was, kind of, she became the best in the world.
Yeah. And I mean, it is one of those American stories, right? From the Harlem courts to being the best in the world while facing probably the biggest adversity an athlete could face in this time.
Right.
Or anyone could face. Right.
Yeah. Anybody. And so we'll wrap up Althea Gibson with kind of that legacy that she leaves. So not only did she go on and, you know, pioneer in tennis as a Black woman, she also was the first ever Black woman to play in the LPGA Tour.
Wow.
So in 1964, about 36 years old, 6 years after winning those back-to-back Wimbledon championships, she becomes the first Black woman to play on the Pro Golf Tour.
Yep.
And I think it feels pretty inherent to me that Althea Gibson would be central to the inspiration for extra famous tennis players like the Williams sisters. Now we have Coco Gauff, American superstar right now. Victoria Mboko is a teenager, a young Black woman from Canada who's coming up, who, like, you think about it, the representation that Althea provided really swung that door more open, not all the way, as we'll talk about, but more open for those women.
Yeah. And I think that the other interesting thing that we're gonna touch on here is that there were some of these women that knocked down some of these doors played multiple sports, which is actually kind of insane. So more power to them. Do we have an Althea Gibson of today's women's sports? Or is this kind of like its own special story?
So I kind of think of, I don't think she's necessary. Well, she is. Along the same, you know, racial lines, right? And the prejudices that exist there. I think a little bit of Layla Edwards, who we just saw become the first Black American woman to play hockey to represent the United States, which seems crazy. It's 2026, and this is the first time that we've done that. Now, I would say that has a little bit of a different tenor to it, because a lot of times for these sports, it's not necessarily, for Layla, it wasn't segregation that was keeping her out, or other Black women out of hockey. Oftentimes it's the cost, right? Yeah. And hockey, we've talked about before on the pod, is very expensive, very
affluent type.
Very affluent, very localized too. Like, hockey isn't as widespread as some other sports, right? So I think she's pioneering in her own right. I think in terms of like facing the same kind of challenges, like, no, because and we are not qualified to speak
not at all
on
those challenges
at all. And so I can't really compare her to anyone else right now.
Yeah, that's valid.
Yeah. So, but history is still being made, as proof in point with Layla Edwards. So staying in this chapter of sort of like proving your existence, right? We talked about that just now with Gibson, and we're going to move to probably a better known name for the audience if you're a sports head, just generally, but Wilma Rudolph. Wilma Rudolph is really an incredible story and another one of resilience and kind of refusing to quit, right? So doctors said, excuse me, that she would never walk normally. Her mother, because behind every success story is a mother, said otherwise. So Wilma Rudolph was born prematurely in 1940 in Clarksville, Tennessee. She was the 20th of 22, you heard me, children.
Poor parents.
her mom, y'all, snaps for her mom.
Poor mom.
And she spent the first decade of her life in a body that just kind of refused to work, right? She had double pneumonia, scarlet fever. She survived polio and ended up in with a brace on her left leg for almost 7 years after that. So this was all before she turned 5. Like somebody was telling her to quit. And her mom was like, heck to the no. You're gonna live, you're gonna thrive, Wilma. So she actually had like her, 24 brothers and sisters take turns. Mom set up like a rotation schedule for them to massage her leg to kind of like keep the blood flowing, right? And things like that. Things that are really, really important when you have an injury like that. And one day, she's 12 years old. She walks into church one Sunday, no leg brace. Never put it back on.
Never put it back on.
So she's 12 years old when that happens. And then it was like all bets are off. I'm throwing myself in every single sport they'll let me play. So she played basketball. She ran track in high school. She once scored 803 points in a season for high school basketball, which set a state record at the time. And then she was discovered by this man named Ed Temple, who ran the Tiger Bells track and field program at Tennessee State University. And so she gets discovered there at the age of 16. So before would have graduated high school, right? In this day and age, she goes and competes at her first Olympics. So she's out in Melbourne in the 1956 Olympics. She wins a bronze medal in the 4x100 meter relay. And you're kind of like, wow, incredible. This girl literally just got out of a leg brace 4 years ago. And she didn't stop there. She just kept going.
I think we're going back. I mean, overcoming the odds. I think we talked about it in our prep. Like, what an origin story for you to basically be like, I was in this leg brace. I refused to give up. We made it work and I got out of it. And I'm just going to continue to push it from there the whole way, right? Yes.
Like, I would be so fascinated to learn more about like what was the therapy, because you also have to imagine that like her mom was a genius, like realizing that essentially what she created for Wilma was physical therapy, right? And she did it probably without like really knowing what she was doing. It was just like, this seems to help her lessen her pain. And
doing something is better than doing nothing.
Right, exactly. And so it's really incredible. And you can sort of see where Wilma probably got her stick-to-itiveness from.
Exactly.
So we win the bronze medal in the 1956 Olympics. We go 4 years ahead to the Rome Olympics in 1960. Wilma's competing on a sprained ankle that happened in kind of a accident the day before she's supposed to race. Okay, we already know this girl's a badass. She's gonna do just fine on a sprained ankle. Like, polio couldn't take her down. Sprained ankle's not gonna hurt her. She wins gold in the 200 meter race, individual. She wins gold in the 100 meter individual race. And then fumbles the baton a couple of times, but still manages to win gold anchoring the 4x100 meter relay team. So that's 3 golds in one Olympics. This has never been done by any American woman before, black, white, no one. And the European press famously called her the fastest woman in the world.
Mm.
And as she's like walking around Rome, she's in Italy, like she's getting mobbed
Wow.
by fans because now you're like one of the most recognizable athletes there. If you watch the Summer Olympics, you know that like track and field is like one of the marquee kind of events of the Olympics. It's one of the oldest ones. It's been around since it started, right?
Yep.
So you can imagine kind of what that like sort of sudden celebrity created. And remind you guys, she's 20 years old at this time.
I think it's totally, I mean, hindsight's 2020, but like you learn about her origin story and then she gets a sprained ankle and you're like, this ain't slowing her down,
that's right?
Like she's still going to go out.
Like,
and,
you know where this is going to happen. Going. So that's not even the most impressive part of her story. So she comes home to Clarksville. She's got her 3 golds. They want to celebrate her, right? They want to throw this victory parade and a banquet and say like, woo, woo, you're great. And we claim you, right? We want you to represent us. And of course, remind you, we're in the 1960s. So as Alex mentioned before, like we had legal movement to end segregation, but the like societal movement to end segregation was not happening yet. So Wilma does what Wilma does, and she's like, I'm not coming unless it's integrated. I'm just not going to show up. And the city was like, all right, we'll integrate this. Yeah. Because again, they wanted to kind of capitalize, right, on the celebrity and the notoriety, which we're going to see that as a theme too here. And so that homecoming parade became one of the first integrated public events in the country, and was the first integrated public event there in Clarksville, Tennessee. Again, I want to remind everybody, she was 20
years old
and understood the power she had in that moment.
There's a lot of different themes that exist in the different stories we have here. And this is one that will come up a lot as well, is where have these women also used their sudden celebrity, the power, whatever it is that they have, to further something that's bigger than them. And we've got a couple of really good ones coming up that we're going to talk about, but I think that's a huge theme to also kind of listen for and understand that is going to happen a lot.
For sure. So just wrapping up with her legacy, she actually retired from competition 2 years later at 22. She's like, I'm good. I've won. I'm going to go out on top and like be done with this, move on to the next thing in my life. And a little bit later in her life, she founded the Wilma Rudolph Foundation, where they go in and mentor and coach underprivileged youth. Mm-hmm. Right. So again, kind of understanding like her value and being able to use that for good in her community is a theme throughout Rudolph's life. She was also, like Althea Gibson, named AP Female Athlete of the Year 2 times in a row, and has, of course, been inducted to the U.S. Olympic Track and Field Hall of Fame. And her story, of course, has inspired the likes of Jackie Joyner-Kersee, Florence Griffith Joyner, FloJo, Sha'Carri Richardson, right, of this day and age for sure. Allison Felix, like there's a whole host of Black women, frankly, who demonstrate their excellence in track and field that we've grown up with now, and that's a direct result of Wilma Rudolph. Yeah. So unfortunately, she did pass away in 1994, pretty young, 54. From cancer, but her legacy certainly lives on through her foundation and those that she's inspired with her story.
Yeah, it's an interesting story of, from a young age, having obstacles and just never learning to say, sure, I'll just deal. Like, I'm not gonna fight it, right? She just stood up to every single one. The leg brace, the sprained ankle, the city who didn't want to integrate, like everything, right? So just a super cool story.
Right.
All right. So we're going to move on here to Patsy Mink. So every time a girl steps onto a soccer field, a basketball court, or a college track, every time a scholarship gets awarded, a women's team gets funded, a locker room gets built, There is a name most of them will never know. Patsy Mink. She didn't set a world record. She didn't win a gold medal. She did what was harder. She walked into the most powerful legislative body in the world and rewrote the rules. And it started with a rejection letter.
Of course.
As
that's what
they
we do
here. So she was born December 6, 1927 in, and again, a name I'm probably going to butcher, Maui, Hawaii. Third generation Japanese American.
Ooh, tough time to be a Japanese American.
Especially growing up under the shadow of World War II.
Yeah.
Japanese Americans faced a ton of discrimination, suspicion, all that during and after the war.
Yes.
She excelled academically, valedictorian of her high school class, and deeply passionate about medicine. Applied to medical schools across the country after graduating from the University of Hawaii and was rejected from everyone. Explicitly because she was a woman and a woman of color.
Of course. Not because she wasn't qualified.
Yes. Because she had 2 strikes against her starting out. One school told her directly they did not accept women, and others just didn't respond.
So this is really like, for me, I mean, we've seen it now with the first 2 women as well, but like every one of these pioneers sort of has that moment of like, no, like the door gets slammed in your face, right? And this was like really, really slammed in her face. Like this was her dream. She really, really wanted to do it. And she was literally told that because of things she cannot control
at all.
Everything she could control, she did fine.
Yes.
Right? Things she couldn't control, she was not allowed.
Yes. Yep. So she had a bit of a pivot. Unable to enter the
I can't not like hear Ross's voice.
Pivot. Unable to enter medicine, Mink enrolled in the University of Chicago Law School and graduated in 1951, one of very few women in the class and the only Japanese American in her class. And she returned to Hawaii and was initially denied admission to the Hawaii bar because she was not yet a resident. And she fought that and won.
Again, this theme of fighting.
She built a legal and political career in Hawaii, becoming a prominent voice for civil rights and equality. And in 1964 was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives, the first woman of color ever elected to Congress.
And she's like, I think what you said, 64. She's like 37 years old right now, too.
Amazing.
So like pretty young for
she's our age.
Dang
she's really young. She's really young.
She is really young. You're so young, honey.
And she carried with her every single day the memory of every door that had been closed.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is where it's like, where's that kind of pivot away from the door that got closed, and like where's that door that is open, and then I'm actually going to lean into that door and say, what avenue can I take to ensure that like that other door doesn't get closed on other women?
100%. Right? And so now we get into probably something that everyone is somewhat familiar with here. So throughout the late 1960s, she witnessed firsthand the systemic exclusion of women from education and athletics. Women were routinely denied admission to universities, professional programs, and athletic opportunities on the basis of sex. Mink became a lead architect and champion of the Education Amendments of 1972. And we're going to talk here about Title IX, and I thought probably best to just read it.
Yeah.
And it's 37 words, so not a long one, but I think everyone will understand here. No person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. And this was signed into law on June 23rd, 1972 by President Nixon. At the time of passage, fewer than 1 in 27 girls played high school sports in America.
It's like gut-wrenching here.
She understood that equal education meant equal access to everything, including athletics.
It's like, it's really crazy to think that something so like sort of brief
Yes.
can have the impact. There,
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
there is no greater moment for women's
Yeah.
sports than this. Like, I was able to play high
Yeah.
school sports because of this
This
legislation,
opened everything up.
right? Because you had to create equal opportunity, right?
Yep.
If you were receiving federal funding, which all public schools
Yes. Yeah.
receive, right?
Yep.
So, thank you to Patsy Mink on behalf of women everywhere.
Yeah.
And I think I love that she sort of, we've talked so far about examples of sort of gaining attention through performance.
Yep.
And that she went at it through policy.
Yeah.
Which is, in some ways, can be more lasting.
Yep.
Has had a more lasting impact.
Yeah.
In a very hard to change way.
Yeah.
Right.
So we're going to fast forward 50 years. And can you guess the number of women, of girls who play high school sports? 1 in 27 in 1972. In 2022, 1 in 2.
Oof.
Half of all girls play high school sports now.
Yeah. That's amazing. It's also amazing too, because you've probably seen statistics on like women who do play sports in high school and like the further you go, kind of the more success you have in your professional career, whatever that might be. Post sports, I'm talking about. They talk about how almost all women in C-suites have played at a varsity level. So these opportunities aren't just important for athletic careers, right? They're important for building skills that carry use well over into any kind of job.
Women's collegiate athletic participation also increased by more than 600% in the decades following the passage of Title IX. Title IX created the pipeline that built the NWSL, the WNBA, PWHL, and every women's professional league that exists today. The 1999 U.S. Women's World Cup team, the moment that changed women's soccer globally, was entirely a Title IX generation. Megan Rapinoe, Caitlin Clark, Asia Wilson, Hillary Knight, all Title IX daughters. And in 2002, the law was officially renamed the Patsy T. Mink Equal Opportunity in Education Act, 1 month after her death. And so kind of looking back at her overall legacy, she served in Congress for a total of 12 terms across 2 stints, one of the longest serving Asian American lawmakers in history. Ran for president in 1972, the first woman of color to seek a major party presidential nomination, and remained in Congress until her death on September 28th, 2002 from viral pneumonia. Posthumously awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2014. And her legacy lives not in stadiums or record books, but in the infrastructure of opportunity itself.
Yeah, I kind of already said what really stands out about her contribution, to where we are. And like, I think, like I said before, I think there's no greater pivot point or change that gets us to where we are now. Now there's still a ton more progress to be made, but at least we have kind of that foundation, and the numbers sort of speak for themselves.
Yeah, and I also think we still have not yet elected a woman president. Shame on us, but I think it's crazy that was it 72 that she ran for president, which is like almost 50 years before it would even be considered semi-normal to be a candidate for president.
Right. When did Hillary run? 2016, right?
So we had a few others.
There's been a few, but like as a
realistically a full party candidate.
So that was 40 years later.
Yeah.
Like, it's insane. So she is certainly one that I know it's interesting. Like, I knew about Title IX, obviously.
But I didn't know who it was.
I didn't really know either.
Yeah.
And I should. So now we know. Now we all know.
New. We all know.
So we're going to move forward into yet another kind of chapter here. We're going to pair a couple of pioneers together. And this is really 2 very different stories, but talking about or focused on fighting to be taken seriously. So now we're in the sort of like it's like around the Title IX era, right? And you kind of have some parallel pathing of Gibson and Rudolph happening in the mixer here too. So keeping all of that in mind, we are going to jump into our story on September 20th, 1973. We're in the Houston Astrodome. There are 30,000 people there. There are 90 million people watching from home around the world.
The world.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah, that's massive.
And what they're watching is Bobby Riggs, 55-year-old former Wimbledon champion and self-proclaimed
Why would you self-proclaim
male
this?
chauvinist has spent months publicly declaring that women's tennis is inferior. And I'm just going to sidebar for a second, but like, what's new? Because we still hear this stuff this day and age. Okay, back to the story. He says that no woman could beat a top male player and that women belonged in the kitchen and the bedroom. Yep, he said it. Not on the court. Enter Billie Jean King, 29-year-old from Long Beach, California, walks into that arena, carried on a golden throne by 4 men, accepted a live piglet from Riggs. I don't really know what that's about.
We got to get the video on this, I think.
Find it. And then she whooped his ass.
Beat him up.
She beat him in straight sets. They played by like the men's rule, so the men play 5 sets in their matches, and she beat him three sets in a row. We'll get to that in a little bit, but the highlight reel of that story, obviously fun and a little bit like over the top, right, and ostentatious, doesn't really give the full picture of what she had to fight through. So Billie Jean was born in 1943, like I said, in Long Beach, California. She picked up a tennis racket at the age of 11, and like immediately they knew she was special. Yeah. Right. Like she kind of just was one of those kids that natural like had a knack, really loved the sport, like that kind of thing. Quickly discovered that tennis is a country club sport.
Speaking of affluent sports,
it's very white. It's very wealthy. And it is deeply unwelcoming to people who are not in the club. Yeah. Right. So we're up against that. She decides she doesn't really care. She's like, I'm good at tennis. I'm going to play tennis. So she wins her first Wimbledon in 1966. So if you're doing math at home, she's 23. Yeah. Wins Wimbledon. And it begins this dominant run for King that spans decades, right? But 39 Grand Slam titles total. Despite that dominance, though, women's players at the time were paid a fraction of what the men's players were paid. So I think one example of this is in 1970 at the Italian Open, the men's champion is paid $3,500, which is probably a decent amount of money back then. The women's champion is paid $700. So they're literally paid 5 times more, the men are, than the women. Yeah, or 1/5. And so she decides, like, I'm not down with this. Yeah. I'm not going to stand for this. I'm bringing in the same people are coming to watch me as are watching the men, right? And we're at the same level of entertainment and skill and whatnot. Yeah. Like, we deserve equal pay.
Well, imagine being the best, the absolute best at your job, and you're getting paid a 5th of what some other person who's also good but not great.
Right, exactly.
I mean, I'm sure we've all probably have experienced that at some form in our jobs.
Yeah, we probably have. So she's like on this mission now, right? Like, not only am I going to be the top tennis player in the world, right, or one of the top tennis players in the world, I am also going to fight for equal pay. So we're in 1970, right after this Italian Open. Billie Jean King and 8 other women decide to sign $1 contracts with a fledgling women's tennis tour, basically an open defiance of the establishment kind of tennis world, right? Yep. And so, as we were laughing about this before, the Virginia Slim Circuit is begun.
What goes together better than tennis and
And some
cigarettes?
Became the foundation of what would become today's Women's Tennis Association. So the WTA, we've talked about that here. We reference it all the time. So King actually formally co-founded the WTA in 1973. They were like, "Oh, smoking's bad for you. Let's move away from
something else here."
I actually don't think that was happening yet in 1973, but and so with the WTA's inception, they created the first professional tour designed specifically for women athletes. She also, at the same time, or roughly around the same time, co-founded Women's Sports Magazine and the Women's Sports Foundation. So she was like, I'm going to go media and I'm going to go advocacy infrastructure alongside building this administrative piece here for me to be able to play tennis, because if I can get the stories out that are accurate and representative of what's going on in women's tennis, and if I have a foundation that is doing research and probably doing some lobbying or things like that that are able to help open doors like Patsy Mink did, I'm going to be that much more successful, right? Or I should say the organization will. She sort of had this understanding right from the start that winning a bunch of tennis matches like really didn't matter if you weren't reaping the benefit from that. And we're seeing that right now with like the WNBA, CBA, right? They're like, we're freaking good and we're not getting paid our worth.
It's we're going to see this a lot with, I think, with Billie Jean King. This is an ongoing legacy of hers. Like, it's paid out billions of dollars to these players, and it all started with her at this point in time.
Right, exactly. So King, of course, becomes is the most prominent vocal advocate for equal prize money at Grand Slam events. So Grand Slam is the US Open, Australian Open, French Open, Wimbledon, are the big ones, right? And in 1973, so shortly after she founds the WTA, like officially, or co-founds it officially, the US Open became the first Grand Slam event to offer equal prize money to men and women. And actually, it's interesting because tennis has long been a sport that has been sort of ahead of the curve from an equal pay perspective versus some of the other team sports, right? I'm going to mention it here, like it would take Wimbledon until 2007 and the French Open until 2006 due to, in large part, one of our other pioneers. We're going to talk about Venus Williams. But they've been doing equal pay. I mean, we just got an equal pay piece of legislation for US soccer in 2022. So like almost 20 years before, tennis was paying their competitors equally, regardless of gender. So I think, you know, she also went through periods of like threatening to boycott, similar to Wilma Rudolph, like not wanting to show up at that thing, kind of recognizing that like she's a draw. There's probably money to be made if she's there. And so if she doesn't show up, she's like, I'm going to leverage that power.
Yeah, exactly. I've got this power to take money out of your pockets. Why are you taking money out of mine?
And so then that leads to what was famously known as, and what I described at the beginning of this segment, as the Battle of the Sexes. And I'm not going to rehash it because I think you kind of got the picture. We'll talk more about it if when we deep dive on Billie Jean King. But I just want to repeat that she did wipe the floor with this guy. And it was interesting because clearly people wanted that spectacle. They were interested. And I think there's probably a curiosity of like, can she back it up?
Yeah.
And boy, did she.
Yeah, she did. 100%.
So we sort of get to like full picture for her. You know, I already mentioned this. So she won 39 Grand Slam titles across singles, doubles, and mixed doubles. 6-time Wimbledon singles champion, 4-time US Open singles titles. She's arguably one of the best to ever play. Now, another challenge that Billie Jean has faced is she came out as gay in 1981. She was one of the first major professional athletes to do that. Like, this was well before it was even like safe in a lot of ways to do that. And became well, as a result of that, I should say, she lost like almost all of her
Yeah.
endorsements overnight. I think another example, though, of her, societally just like sign of the times, unfortunately, but like the bravery
Yeah.
to like live unapologetically as yourself
Yep.
in a world that is going to push back against that
Yep.
and you.
For a lot of people, it would be a lot easier to just continue to hide that.
Right.
And she was like, no, that's not,
Right.
that's not
I mean,
me.
she was almost 40 at this point. Like, you
Yeah.
kind of wonder, like, why wouldn't you? Right. Isn't
Yeah.
it just easier? And I think she, like, it's not.
Yeah.
I think that's true for all queer people.
Yeah.
Right. Like, to kind of hide a part of yourself feels not good.
Yeah.
She's, then gone on to be a really prominent LGBTQ advocate, which is great because we need more of that
Yes.
representation for the reasons I just mentioned. She's been awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by President Obama in 2009, and she's been named one of the 100 most important Americans of the 20th century by Life magazine. And I got to add here, she is also the co-founder, strategic advisor, and advocate for the PWHL. And she actually has the MVP trophy is named after her. It's the Billie Jean King MVP trophy or award for the best player in the league, which I think kind of speaks to her, right?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. One, it was really cool. She got to say, let's play hockey at one of the finals games we went to, which was really fun. But
she's around all the time.
As much as she was like a dominating force on the court, like the amount of institutions that she's leaving behind, like an insane legacy, both on and off the court, like just crazy to me.
Yeah, agree. All right. So the next pioneer in this chapter, like I said, very different kind of path than Billie Jean King, but it is Donna Lopiano. So probably not a name that
this is new to me.
Many people know. I learned a lot reading up on her, and she's an administrator. So we're going to talk about this again, kind of like Patsy Mink, right? Kind of leading not with athleticism, but with legislation. Donna Lopiano actually was both. So we'll talk a little bit about her backstory, but to start us off, we're going to start Donna's story in 1975. So around the time that
shortly after Title IX
and Billie Jean King is doing the equal pay thing, she started the WTA, right? There's some momentum here. But we're at the University of Texas. The women's athletic program had a budget of $57,000 for the whole program for the whole year. $57,000.
Yeah, that's not much.
The men's side of athletics and whatnot is millions.
Yeah,
even in the 70s.
Yeah,
right. They don't have any scholarships. They don't have facilities, at least not really worth mentioning, right? They don't have a national profile.
Yeah.
Now think of the University of Texas at Austin,
without a national profile.
Without a national profile for women's sports.
Yeah.
Like they are dominant in volleyball, track and field, swimming. I mean, basketball to a degree.
They're in the Sweet 16 right now.
They are in the Sweet 16 tomorrow, I think. So, Donna Lopiano arrives as the athletic director that year, 1975, with a legal pad, a vision, and an almost unreasonable belief that women's athletics deserved to be taken seriously. 18 years later, she left behind the most decorated women's athletic program in the country, 18 national championships across multiple sports, a scholarship infrastructure, and a model that every major university would eventually try to replicate. She did not just build a program, she built a blueprint for how this should be done. So let's go a little bit to her origin story. She was born on September 11th, 1946 in Stamford, Connecticut. She was a gifted multi-sport athlete. You referenced this before. Like she played all the sports,
everything.
Baseball, basketball, softball, volleyball. She was often not allowed to participate because she was a girl.
Yeah.
Right. Girl in the 40s, 50s at this point.
Yeah.
Like probably not allowed to be playing. She didn't let the rejection break her like
Yeah.
a lot of our other pioneers. She was just like, okay, this isn't cool. Like,
Yeah.
let's go
Still gonna
find
find a
these.
way to
Yeah,
do
I'm going to
this.
find a way. Exactly. So she went on to be one of the greatest softball players in American history. When I was reading about this, I was like, you just like wonder about timing and how like if she had been now,
Yes.
like
What
now
would she
there's a
have been?
league. There's
Yeah.
like a league she could have played in,
Yeah.
right? And I'm sure that she may have those same thoughts, but she is one of the ones that made the league like
Yeah.
Athletes Unlimited Softball League or the Professional Baseball League like possible.
Yeah. Well, and I think the important part here is that she experienced some of these things firsthand, and sometimes you
Yeah.
need someone in administration that has dealt with those type of things
Yeah.
in order to make the changes necessary.
Totally. Totally. I agree. So she went on to earn a doctorate in physical education at the University of Southern California. And then in 1975, as we started, she was hired as the AD for Texas University of Texas. Excuse me. They would get
Yes.
really mad
Yeah,
if I
they
said
would.
it that way. If you're doing the math, she's 29.
Yeah.
So she's very young to be taking on. If
The
37 was young, right?
Yeah,
29 is
exactly.
very
Really young.
and so like we said, like she's taking over this program that has $57,000 to millions of dollars on the men's side, $57,000 for the women. No athletic scholarships exist. Title IX, of course, like Alex mentioned, had passed in 1972, but as with anything, right? It just takes time to infiltrate and to
Yeah.
actually the societal change on things like that, as we talked about with segregation, right? Just takes more time for
Yeah.
people to sort of change the way that they're
Yeah, it
thinking
does.
about things. So she gets there and immediately begins pushing for scholarships, elite coaches, facilities. She's like, we need all of these things, right? We cannot like expect this to be successful
Mhm.
without this infrastructure.
Yeah.
She, of course, faced significant internal resistance from university administration. I'm sure it's some of the same arguments I hear when I talk to
Yeah.
people about women's sports today of like, that don't generate any money,
Yeah.
right? And things like that. What's interesting in a tie back to Patsy Mink is Donna kept a copy of Title IX on her desk. And she used it as both kind of a legal tool, like, hey, I've got legislation behind
Yep.
me to say that we need to be doing this, and just kind of a moral argument,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
So,
It's really interesting. I think the one thing, and I don't know if we have the answer for this, but like, how was Title IX enforced? Because it seemed like some of these
probably
should not
not.
be as much of a fight,
Yeah,
but
it probably wasn't enforced.
probably wasn't really enforced.
No, and I actually think she, even in some of my reading up on her, that was part of her challenge, was like there wasn't really like the support from the federal government
Yeah.
level, the federal level, to go into schools and say you're not
You're
enforcing
not doing
this.
this. Yeah.
And she actually has now become, like, post her athletic director days, she runs a foundation or research association or something where she's done some consulting where she'll help support ensuring that it is
Yeah.
being
Okay, cool.
used appropriately. So we talked about the 18 national championships in 18 years, right?
Yeah.
Dominant programs we talked about in swimming and dive, track and field, softball, volleyball, tennis, basketball, golf. She grew that women's athletic budget from that $57,000 to over $4 million in 18 years. And she was able to establish full scholarship programs across women's sports, which gave female athletes the same foundational
Yep.
support as their male counterparts. And she was also able to recruit and retain elite coaches as a
Mm.
result of this, which then draws athletes,
Yep.
right? There's kind of a little bit of a
Flywheel.
flywheel that
Yeah.
happens there. And Texas athletics really became the national model, right, for how these programs should be structured in the wake of Title IX,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Now you kind of have to,
Yeah.
to your
Yep.
point.
Yeah.
And so this proof of concept that she created of fully investing in women breeds success,
Yeah.
right? Like she proved that out over 18 years.
Yeah. I mean, we just talked about this last week on our podcast. Like, you invest and look what happens, like
Right.
every time. And we
Right.
have, this is 50 years ago this started,
Yep. We're still talking
and
about it.
we're still talking about it.
So in 1992, she left Texas to become the CEO of the Women's Sports Foundation. If that sounds familiar, it's because I just mentioned that Billie Jean
Yeah.
King co-founded the Women's Sports Foundation in 1973-ish, 74. So she served as CEO for the Women's Sports Foundation for 15 years, really transforming the WSF into the most prominent policy and research voice for women's sports across the country.
Yeah.
So it became one of the leading national, she became, excuse me, I should say, one of the leading national experts on Title IX
Yeah, there you
compliance
go.
and enforcement. So she actually is probably the one that helps, has written process and policy
Yes.
to help enforce it, right?
Yep.
She testified before Congress, consulted with universities, and pushed universities to stop treating Title IX as a liability, which a lot of them were saying it was at the time, and start treating it as an opportunity.
Yes.
She's like, look, we use this, we leverage it, we grow, we breed success.
For those of you
Right.
not in sales, opportunity means dollar signs.
Opportunity does
Usually.
mean dollar signs. In our society, yes. So then she went on after that 15 years at Women's Sports Foundation to found Sports Management Resources in 2007 to consult directly with athletic departments on gender equity strategy. And she has spent decades, obviously, arguing that the gap between men's and women's athletic investment is not inevitable, that it's a choice and it can be unmade.
Yeah.
So she's been inducted now into the National Sports Hall of Fame and the Women's Sports Foundation International Women's Sports Hall of Fame. That is a lot.
Yeah.
She's a recipient of numerous lifetime achievement awards, as you can imagine. Like we've said before, the infrastructure she built at Texas really is the blueprint that so many other universities and really has set the baseline for Power 5 institutions, right? And then her tenure, like we just said, like really proved that when women are properly resourced and properly supported, they are successful.
Yes.
Right. And quite frankly, that's not always the case with men's programs.
Yeah.
It's not always the case with women's programs, but she was kind of, again, like that proof of concept that you can't just claim that like they're not good when you're not giving them the opportunities that are equitable.
Yeah. It's part breaking down a door, but part pouring the foundation. Like for everything we have right now, I don't even know what she looks like. Imagine her standing next to a concrete machine, just like, we're just gonna put this down.
That kind of suits
real
her,
nice,
actually.
and it's gonna grow from here.
So, you know, we learned so much in just like hearing about these five women, 5 women we've talked about here. We have 6 more
to talk about,
to bring to you. We're gonna do that in a special part 2.
Yeah.
We'll pull back some of the themes that we've talked about here, thread those through the narratives, and we're gonna launch ahead sort of into like now we've got some of our featured characters who are going to be born in more of like the 70s or
we're going to start to edge into that more modern era.
Yeah, more modern era. Names you've probably heard. We mentioned Venus Williams already. We're going to talk a little bit about Simone Biles, Megan Rapinoe.
Yeah, I mean, for the people who are our age-ish, they're going to be people that you heard of growing up, like your entire childhood.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're excited to bring part 2 to you guys. We're probably going to do a little like special out of cycle drop for that, just so we can get it to you a little bit quicker. But
yeah,
let us know your thoughts.
Yeah, I almost like doing this a little bit more than some of the headlines sometimes, because I love this is like a history lesson and I love history. So
it is.
This is fun for me.
All right. Well, we will talk to y'all next time.
Yeah. Be sure to follow us, RTG_pod on Threads and Instagram, rtgpod.com for our website. Make sure to subscribe to the Substack if you want a Friday morning kind of just rehash on what we talked about, things coming up throughout the weekend, stuff like that.
Yeah. Till next time.
Bye.
Bye.